guys, we are live. So this is going to be a general live. It's been a minute since I did a YouTube live. So, I'm kind of open to talk about anything, any of your questions related to dog training, dog behavior, so on and so forth. We've been having a busy last couple of weeks, been putting a lot of content out there, been enjoying ourselves, training our dogs, so on and so forth, bringing in 2025 in the appropriate way. So I'm just gonna wait. I know this is kind of like all my lives, last minute. Didn't really announce this ahead of time because I didn't know if I was gonna do one ahead of time. I just kind of felt like it tonight, and I said, let's jump on here and talk to people about dogs and dog training. One of my favorite things to talk about. So wait for everybody to jump on and join, and we'll get after it. We'll start. What's up? What's up? I see you guys jumping on here. You got people from across the pond. Good to see. Can you get a tour of my house? No, I don't think so. You guys got a tour of my kennel and my training facility. That's enough. We got Nina saying, hi, Has. My Doberman Zuko, who I know, stays often with you guys. Hef and everyone else did an amazing job with him. He loves Shield. Awesome. We're always happy to see Zuko. Your Facebook, Velcro goes, your Facebook is funny. The Andy E-collar people, LOL. Yeah. Yeah, well, there's an art to the whole social media thing. We can talk about it. So Brandon goes, how's the weather in the 51st U.S. state tonight? Man, I'm looking forward to some tax breaks and a lot of the other benefits that would come from something like that. Unfortunately, it will not happen. But yeah, no, the weather, miserable. um, would I start a Shield Canine in USA, specifically California? I personally have zero interest in going to California. Between the government and the wildfires, I could never see myself really going there for anything longer than a couple of days. So no, I don't have any personal interest in doing it. But yeah, I mean, anything's possible. Guardian Angel Shepherd says, did you see photos of Dak Hawk? No, I did not. Someone asked me, do you have any treats you recommend for training? Should they be smelly or will freeze-dried work just fine? Well, listen, for me, like I don't use dog training treats. I just train with the dog's food. So my dogs generally eat Royal Canin. So I just use Royal Canin as treats. And I find most dogs like working for it. I mean, doesn't really matter if you're going to use dog treats. You can use freeze-dried liver. You can use rollover, whatever it is you want, whatever the dog likes, right? What's your solution for a dog that doesn't want to take a tug toy? That's from Caleb when the decoy is present. He learns he has to take the tug toy in order to get the decoy. Josh Imana says, man, those clips you recently uploaded from off-leash walking definitely got the attention of people. Yeah, we'll talk about that actually because that's actually important. Um, so when it comes to what we're doing, like obviously I put out a video on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, feel free to catch it, where I basically just went for an off-leash walk with my friend Carson, who's another dog trainer. And we just talked about dog training and walked our dogs off leash. And, it had a very big response. And then, of course, all the small pieces of content that got clipped off of that went on Instagram and Facebook created quite a buzz. And I think that's really interesting because that's actually what I started in this business by doing, right? Was just me going for off-leash walks with my dogs. And that was actually one of my first goals with dogs. Like when I got a pet dog, I just thought, wouldn't it be so cool if I could just go everywhere with this dog, go hiking, go here, go there, and the dog would just be off leash with me and really easy. Like my first dog that I owned, obviously she was on a leash all the time. She would run away. This was before obviously I was a dog trainer. Like she would run away. She would always come back, but you know what I mean? Like she didn't listen. Luckily she was like really good and she would always eventually come home or come back. But she was very optional in everything she did. She would pull on the leash. She was generally actually quite a good dog, but just naturally. But there it wasn't, let's say, the most easy experience to take her for a walk, for instance. It was, I love taking her for walks, but it wasn't like the most easy experience to take her for a walk. And you had to manage her and you had to like kind of think about her a lot when you walked her versus when you have true functional control, true functional obedience on a dog. It's fantastic taking them places, whether you're going somewhere in an urban environment like the city that you saw us walking around in, where we filmed that video, or you're going for a forest walk, or whatever it is you're doing. It is a absolute game changer. The dog is like a friend, like just with you, You're not managing the dog constantly. Oh, where is he? What's he? Oh, no, he's pulling me. You saw literally, I'm just walking there, talking to my friend, drinking a cup of coffee, laughing, joking, saying things that I know are going to piss people off and, just having a good old time. And my dog is just next to me. And the funny thing is, we hadn't done that in such a long time. And it really reminded me how much fun it is to just go for a walk, because I always do all this, dog sport, and I do a lot of very like, goal oriented training. It had been a long time since I just took my dogs for a walk, so it was a fantastic experience. But it's funny how like it got such a strong response. Whereas like if you go way back on my channel, you'll see like that's pretty much most of what I did was just take my dogs different places and go for walks. Obviously, it wasn't the same kind of video as what you saw in the sense of all the laughing, joking, talking value that I dropped in relation to dog training, dog behavior. But I think, like I said, there's something super powerful. There's a lot of people, they talk on the internet about dogs. There's a lot of people that write about dogs. There's not a lot of people that can communicate effectively and also show with the dog. And I'm not talking about showing things that are meaningless. Like I'll give you guys an example. So, just about every clip from that entire video caused some kind of problems, and people were, pissed people off, made people upset. But I tell you what, if people aren't responding strongly, whether it's positively, negatively, ideally a combination of both, you're probably not really effectively communicating, right? And the key to effective communication is to create response, which stimulates thought, which stimulates discussion, so on and so forth. So, one of the things that I said in that was that there's, teaching a dog to follow a lure or putting a ball, for instance, in my armpit. And me and Carson in the video, we both have dogs that have like really high drive. Okay. The average person that is watching this, the average person, that is looking for help with their dog does not have a dog with high drive. I don't care what anybody says. I've trained thousands of dogs. I know they don't, the average person does not have a dog that has that drive. And even if you do have a dog that has that drive, unless you've spent, many, many, many months shaping it, developing it, teaching the dog, to work in a certain way for that toy or for that food, it is not realistic to expect the average pet owner's dog, it's not realistic or desirable, in my opinion, to expect the average pet owner's dog to respond in the same way that a working dog would to food and to ball, right? To a ball or a tug or whatever it is you have. So for instance, if I take a ball and I put it in my armpit, and either of my working dogs knows, like they watch me do that, right? Or if they even suspect I might have a ball on me, they are going to not take their eyes off of me. They are going to stare at me fixedly. They're going to bark at me. They're going to follow me. They're going to offer like a dozen different behaviors to try and get that ball. And they're going to keep doing it for like 15, 20 minutes. They're going to walk literally through fire. Like there's nothing, like they won't even think about anything other than me and that ball, right? And that's a combination of obviously a lot of genetics and also the right kind of training to foster that behavior, because that's the kind of behavior that I want in the competition field. That is not the kind of behavior I want from a pet. When I walk my dog, so you guys saw how I was walking Gage, right? Not only is he not on my left side, he's not focus healing. I did some focus healing in the video just for fun, right? We focus healed across the street and, got the dogs active and so on and so forth. It's just, to show that we can turn it on and turn it off. But like 9 times, like the vast majority of the time, our dogs were just walking at our side. They weren't staring at us. They were actually spending more time staring at the environment, taking that in, especially since it was relatively novel for them, since they hadn't been, out and about like that in a long time. And the dogs were just kind of walking next to us. They weren't in a perfect position. They were just next to us. They were, sometimes a little in front, sometimes a little off to the side, head down, looking around, taking in the environment. They were not staring at us constantly, right? And what you saw is the dogs walking, their tails were wagging because they were excited, but their ears were back. Right now, a lot of people don't understand why the ears were back, right? So if you watch the dogs, go back and watch that YouTube video or watch, some of the Instagram clips, you'll see the dog ears back, tails like, right? Excited, aroused, but also paying attention to us, right? Just because the dog isn't staring at you doesn't mean the dog isn't thinking about you and paying attention to you. So both the dogs knew that they couldn't get too far in front of us and they couldn't get too far away from us. So the ears were back, making sure that they were listening to our movement. The dog's listening to your movement, and the dog is also listening for any kind of command that you're giving, right? You'll notice that whatever dog is thinking about, their ears orient towards that. So in focus healing, you'll see that our dog's ears are up, right? Because they're staring at us and all their attention and focus is up at us, and the dog's ears are up in many cases in the focus healing, because that's everything. Every sense in their body is aimed in that direction, okay? Versus, like, if your dog's kind of walking, you'll see the ears either at half mast, right, where they're just kind of out sideways and the dog's kind of taking in, all the sounds around them. Or if the dog really is trying to focus on you, but also see what's going on everywhere and think about, kind of things simultaneously, you'll see their ears are back thinking about you, right? So the dogs were simultaneously concentrating on us, but also taking in the exciting environment that they were in. And that is why you saw that body language in the dogs. Now, I knew, right? I knew, like, anybody who really understands body language, not what they read in a book or what they heard somebody else, parrot on the internet. They know, like, what they're looking at. They're looking at a dog who's concentrated, but also simultaneously excited, right? So that's where you get the ears back, the occasional lip lick where it's like, oh no, I think I might be making a mistake. Oh, okay, I'm not. Okay, good. But, oh, that's really exciting. That's really exciting. That's really exciting. Oh, where is he? Right? So their brain is kind of like that. They're not really great multitaskers in general. You can really see what they're thinking if you really understand their body language. Whereas you'll see if a dog's like pulling on the leash or, like many of these dogs, like walking on a harness or whatever, right? Dog's ears are full forward because the dog does not think at all about the handler, right? The handler is just the idiot on the other end of the leash. The dog's complete focus is looking at whatever it is that they see around them and focusing on that. So anyways, I made the comment that, and some people took exception to it, that, it's not real to take a ball, stick it in your armpit, or to take some food and either conceal it on you or lure a dog with food and, do that in a maybe busier area and then pretend that that's training, right? And I demonstrated why in the video, because yes, for sure, dogs like ours will do it. But that's not how a dog should walk. A dog should actually, I believe that if you're taking your dog out for a walk and just taking your dog around, there's no reason why your dog should be focus healing. Your dog should just be taking in the environment and enjoying it and, experiencing things the way you are experiencing them. Focus healing is for the competition field. It is not for daily life. Okay. So that's number one. Number two, the reason why it's also not real is because it doesn't apply to the vast majority of people. That lady that brought me her German Shepherd Rottweiler mix today, that we're going to train for reactivity and leash pulling and not listening to recalls, that dog doesn't have that drive, nor does he need that drive for the life that he is going to live and lead, right? That dog just needs functional obedience. Functional obedience can be primarily taught with a combination of negative reinforcement and positive reinforcement. Right? And if you really want to, you can train it exclusively with negative reinforcement. That's me saying something that's not super popular to say because, a lot of people listen, obviously we want the dog to be 100% balanced. I'm a big believer actually in play. If I had to rank things, like play over treats any day of the week. But the key thing, right, is in your training, there should be balance. It should be good to be good and it should be bad to be bad, right? But What is bad and what is good? Your dog has no idea. And it's up to you when you train the dog to delineate these things. These are all artificial behaviors that we're training, right? Like these people want to always pretend like, oh, like if the dog just loves you enough. And, if you're like, you use like, they always have like these silly acronyms they come up with and whatever else, right? Oh, Lima, whatever, Premac, all this nonsense they come up with, right? All it means fundamentally is, oh, if you just reward your dog in the right way and keep your dog under this threshold or that threshold, your dog will listen to you if you do this for like 3 years. The reality is it won't, right? That casual act that I did with my friend Carson, where we just took our sport dogs on a whim. Literally, I called him up that day. Hey, like, you want to go for a walk? We'll film it and just have fun. That's literally what we did, right? So we went and did that. That casual act, right, created a problem for these people because once again, we talk about concepts, but we also show with our dogs, right? Whether it's on the sport field, whether it's in real life, whether it's, with somebody's pet dog, whatever, right? I'm a big believer in talking and showing at the same time. A lot of people just talk. So you know, that's why I like to release this type of content because it makes people think about dog training. Makes people think about dog training the right way. And yes, sometimes I'm being cheeky and sometimes I'm poking fun at certain ideas or things or types of people, but I think that's a healthy thing. That's what stimulates discussion, not just the dry repetition of information, especially when you're not showing. So, and like I say, there's a lot of people out there that really don't believe in what, like, I shouldn't say a lot. There's a fringe but vocal minority of people that really don't like what we stand for and what we say when it comes to dog training and dog behavior. They want to do anything they can to discredit it. I say, listen, the best way to combat an idea is to have a better idea. So get out there with your dog, right? Do exactly what we do and talk about your ideas in relation to dog training. Take your dog for an off-leash walk through a busy urban area, and do it as effortlessly as we do and casually talk about your beliefs in relation to dog training and dog behavior. And if it's, similar to what we're doing, I'm sure people will be happy to listen. Go and have that success, on the competition field and go compete against the best people in the world, with a dog that you've raised and trained and shown that entire process. And that's going to give you some, form of a platform as well, right? Platforms aren't just bequeathed from the sky. Platforms are generally the product of a lot of hard work and a lot of trust that's built up over time. At least they used to be. I mean, there's no, of course, you can obtain a platform if you have a nicely shaped rear end and you're wearing the appropriate pants, let's say. But when we're talking about something that's skills based like dog training, generally, I would say that you have to be able to show something. So, anyways, that's my perspective on that. I'm going to start getting back to the some of the comments, and then we'll go from there. Um, let's see here. Matt Kramer says, I'm intrigued with a crossing of Sting and Hurricane. What do you think? What? What? You're just picking random dogs off my website and trying to breed them together, my friend. That makes absolutely no sense. Mid-X Clappers, my Doberman is persistent with whining while crated, even after working. What would you do for this? Thanks. Have struggled with this with him for years. I would make whining an unpleasant experience for him until he stopped whining, right? It's very, very simple. Hi, Has, do you have any other tricks to get a dog to leave you in order to condition the recall? Some dogs I struggle with, even around more higher distractions, they will just stay loose leash. Yeah, you're probably recalling the dog too much, which is why the dog won't leave you. It could also be the collar that you're using. If you have the dog on a prong collar or something else, they might be more, concerned about pulling on the leash, so therefore they won't go too far away from you, and that's their kind of method of staying safe. What I would do is put the dog on a flat collar or a harness and let the dog get out away from you and stop recalling the dog so much. Throw some food on the ground. There's a lot of different things that you can do. All right, let's see here. MDC says, Hazard turned 5 years old yesterday. I couldn't be happier with my protection trained dog from you. Stable and the real deal. Yes, Hazard is the real deal. Glad to hear it. Luna the Dane says, are there strict leash laws in your area? There are in mine and literally everywhere around me. For a dog who's completely off leash trained, what are your views on following or not following them? I don't advise anybody to do anything in relation to the law. All I'm going to say is that there's no place really in Canada, I don't think, that doesn't have leash laws. I've walked my dog off leash and many provinces and many cities, and I've never had any problems. But that's because it's super clear that my dogs are right next to me, are under control, and are very well trained and well behaved. And I've literally walked by police officers and so on and so forth. So that's my experience. If other people have different experiences, I know the vast majority of people that bring up leash laws as a when they're opposed to what it is that I'm doing, it's really more because they're jealous that they can't obtain the same results. So they're trying to utilize the law to either shame me or make an excuse as to why they're not doing what I'm doing. But it's just between individuals, between dog handlers, it's completely up to you what you want to do. Um, My song says, I'm a 13-year canine handler and recent unit trainer. I have a 16-month-old Malinois Shepherd that is giving me a problem with the out. I've tried everything in my bag of tricks from pinch to E. Help. Your bag of tricks, sir, or ma'am, consists of tools, and that's the problem. Tools are simply a magnification of what you're doing. You can make an out worse with both of those things, or you can make an out better with both of those things. You just have to understand the reason why the dog may or may not be letting go. I have a course, an online course, in which I go over how to teach the out, and I do so with an extreme drive Camp PV Malinois that I had recently got from Holland, and she does not have an out. So you guys can, if you want, obtain that online course, and I go through step by step how to train the out, and I show an out how I start out training with puppies. It's actually positive. 99% of it is like positive only training, but then with the working line green dog, similar to what you have that has like extreme drive, I have a process that I follow for teaching the out as well, and it has worked 100% of the time with any dog that I've ever trained. Um, Dominique Bromwell says, if I want my dog protective, should I not socialize him with other people besides family, or is the dog just social or not? I mean, sociability of a dog there's a huge component of sociability, just embedded in the genetics of the dog. But if you have a dog that's kind of in the middle, so to speak, the more you socialize them, obviously, the more you're going to desensitize them to the presence of people that they don't know, and the less they're going to be aware of it because it's just something that happens all the time. So, I would say that if you want the dog to be a little bit wary of strangers, unless the dog is a love bug, reducing how much interaction the dog has with strangers and limiting that would certainly, help with the dog being less sensitive, or sorry, more sensitive to the presence of people they don't know. AJ Red says, quick question. Have you ever had a case where the e-collar was not beneficial to a dog? For example, it freaked them out too much? No, I've never had that. There are as many cases in which pressure, right, freaks out a dog, whether it's the dog's predisposed response to the pressure or it's the dog's learned experience that was not good with the pressure. In all cases, the solution is pressure. The solution is to fix the dog's automatic response to the pressure and go from being unproductive to productive, right? So if somebody does this to me, right, they kind of push me, let's say, like somebody took a hand and they did this, and my response is to push back really hard, right? And their goal was to train me to do this. If they did this, right, and they pushed me really hard and I was just pushing back and not doing something, would the solution be to be like, can you please just put your head over, right? No, that's not going to fix that issue, right? Now, if they said, hey, this is creating more pushing back against me, like this isn't working. I'm just giving you an example with pressure, right? This is making me not, and sorry, I should add a caveat to this, right? Assume that I don't want to put my head there, okay? So they've said, hey, right? Can you put your head there? I said no. And their solution was, okay, I'm going to push your head. And I'm like, no, you're not going to push my head. I'm going to fight against it. Maybe I'll try to bite your hand, whatever it is, right? And this is conducive to maybe like teaching a dog to lie down or teaching a dog to sit that doesn't want to sit, right? And it's like they know what you're asking them to do, but they don't particularly want to do it for various reasons. There's many reasons why a dog might not want to do what you want him or her to do, just as there are many reasons why a human might not want you to do, or might not want to do what you want them to do. So the goal is to get my head that way. The goal is to get me to do this with my head, right? So they're pushing me. I'm not doing it. Maybe I'm biting them, whatever. What if they say, okay, well, that's not working. Maybe let's pull them, right? Let's pull them. and I can't quite get them, and that's really uncomfortable. And in response to that pressure going this way, I'm going to crank my head that way, right? I'm fighting, and then they let go. Oh, that was nice. And I'm like, hey, I don't want to be here. So I put my head back up and they start pulling again, right? Oh, that's uncomfortable. Can't get rid of that. 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 Oh, that's nice, right? Complete nonverbal. That's an example of pressure, right? Being used in different ways to one was being creating a non-productive response and one was creating a productive response. Now, let's say they pushed on my head and I bit them, right? And they stopped. Well, that's my solution to their pressure. And now this creates that. Not good, right? Or let's say I just fought them really hard and was super stubborn and didn't move my head for like 20 minutes, right? Is that productive? And they're like, okay, this is getting us nowhere. So they stop, right? Those are both examples in which they stopped utilizing the pressure. And I basically became even more resistant to the pressure. Come on, Has, please go over there. No, not doing it, right? So this is, those of you that can understand what I'm trying to say and the analogy and the example I'm trying to make, you kind of understand what I'm going. But yes, the solution is always pressure. It's just creating a different response to the dog's natural automatic response to pressure. Any suggestions on indoor training with limited space during bad weather? I want to keep my mouth fulfilled, but running out of fun things to do. Oh, there's always new things to teach the dog. You know, there's 1,001 tricks. If you're thinking of trying to think of tricks, just go on YouTube and be like, hey, like what are some new things I can teach? The other thing too is it's not just about teaching new behaviors, it's about chaining behaviors together. That's actually quite difficult for dogs, right? Do this, right? And reduce how much let's say positive let's reduce how many times you reward it. So like how many behaviors can I do in a row without reinforcing those behaviors? There's many different ways that you can, stimulate a dog in a relatively small space, right? Teaching them new things, so on and so forth. Logan says, love it. We need more of this. We need more pro trainer tests and more Ian. Well, Ian's all over the Instagram, so you can see him on there, and he has his own Facebook page. By all means, check him out. Jorge Martinez says, hey, have you seen the influencer dude from Spain that's been criticizing your videos? Mia Skogster and Nino, too. No, I haven't. There's a bunch of numpties out there that criticize what I do, but none of them have ever accomplished anything. So I don't pay attention to them, right? I pay attention to peers in the field, right? There's a lot of, people out there that nobody knows, and they're just trying to kind of get clout off of the name of somebody that, actually has done something. But it's like, really, like in dog training, there are no shortcuts. Go and train. Go, if you truly believe that what I'm saying is wrong, or what Nino's saying is wrong, or what Mia's saying is wrong, go do the same thing. Go do the same thing do it better. And people will listen to you. It's not complicated, right? Stop complaining. Go do it. I don't pay attention to these people. These are low-level people. These are like, little parasites. They don't want to put in the work. They just want to talk. Tara McFadden says, in IGP, what counts as a pace? I thought steps, but I have short legs, so my steps aren't equal to the average man's, referring to the long down exercise. A pace is a pace. A pace is a pace. It doesn't matter if your legs are short or your legs are long. If you got short paces, you're doing short paces. If you're doing long paces, you're doing long paces. It doesn't matter. A pace is a pace. Crickton says, for me, I would like to see focused healing only on the handler's eyes in IGP. No, I would not like to see that. I don't think it's comfortable for the dog to have to crank their head around your body and look you in the face. Not necessary and not productive, especially since my eyes can't be looking back down in the dog. My eyes are on this plane. I'm looking this way. The dog must look up, okay? Now, I'm not the chunkiest fella out there, but there's, some people that are a little bit bigger. There's some ladies that are a little bit well endowed. Now the dog has to be really in front of them and have their head cranked all the way around and across their body to look into their eyes. This is old school, and it creates a very inharmonious picture, right? The most harmonious picture Is the dog moving naturally beside you, and for them to be able to do that and also look at you, they must look either directly up, and in most cases with the German Shepherd, slightly to the side, in which case they're actually looking into your shoulder. So yeah, no, I don't agree with that. Let's see. Our 6-month-old puppy just went through a month of suffering from pano. It was quite a bummer. We reduced food and exercise. He's a bit better now. I know it can come back. Any suggestions? Yeah, just get a bunch of anti-inflammatories, and don't overfeed the dog. Just make sure he doesn't grow, too fast. Just keep his food consumption. It's more the protein. You don't want to give the dog. Oh, what is it? There's a trick. It's been a long time since I had a puppy that I dealt with pano with, but there's a trick actually. What is it? Maternity vitamins, the vitamins that pregnant women take. It's like a multivitamin or something. Um, I actually had an old breeder tell me you give the dog that once per day, and it reduces or completely removes any kind of panasitis. Don't, I'm not a vet. Don't, do what I'm telling you. I'm just telling you what I heard from somebody. Personally, did I do it and did it work? Yes. But I'm not telling you to do it. There was something, I can't remember if it was like, hey, don't take the one with folic acid in it, or make sure it has folic acid in it. So do your due diligence. Just make sure that folic acid is not toxic to dogs. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. But anyways, yeah, that was the trick. And then, you just get some anti-inflammatories from the vet, and you give it to the dog, and it's all better. Switching to adult food too. That's one thing that I did. Uh, let's see what else we have here. Crichton says Pinnacle is Ivan Balabanov's free healing. Some people like it, some people don't. Um, your book is coming in the mail today. Awesome, Chris. I hope you enjoy it. Let's see here. Hello from Germany. Appreciate your content. Helped me a lot with my Dutch herder. Awesome, man. Super happy to hear it. Uh, Guys, don't fight over if I'm better than Ivan Balabanov. He has I mean, I don't do like a lot of the things he does, but he has a different way of doing things in many cases. Um, Ivan's free healing is the epitome of dog training. Armpit healing is full power, but I would like to see it made more difficult. No, and again, Ivan's training Malinois that have more flexible necks. It's like at the end of the day, the dog should move harmoniously with the handler. For me, the dog looking in the handler's face is not productive, like I said, in many cases. Some people like Ivan's healings. Other people like a different kind of healing. It really depends. At the end of the day, if the dog's in the correct position and shows good harmonious movement without crowding the handler, they're going to get excellent score. Greg says, has you're asking for something that's never going to happen. It's all half-baked theory and feelings. Yeah, that's very true, as are most ideological positions. But I still will extend to them the opportunity instead of saying you're wrong, or and again, we're talking about the people that really don't agree with the way that I train. Instead of saying you're wrong, or calling them names as they choose to call me, and making up stories and writing long paragraphs on the internet. I just choose to show, and I would invite them to do the same thing if they truly feel strongly about what they do, and in the validity of what they do from a dog training perspective. Just get your dog out there and show people, and I'm sure some people will subscribe to what it is you're selling. Uh, Nin says, Whippet Puppy is getting worse rather than better on the playpen or crate. Why is the point of screaming when I walk away from his sight? Well, that's because you have not corrected him for making noise that you find unappealing. Let's see here. Velcro says, my almost 6-month-old Doberman is choking herself out on the slip leash. Is this too young to start with a prong collar? I do know how to fit it and use it correctly. No, it's not too young. I mean, I typically don't even use slip leads for puppies because of that reason. They will pull a lot and choke. Typically, for me with puppies, they're just on a flat collar. until I, decide to progress their training past that stage. But yeah, you can certainly do it. The Jindo Man says, let's bring the likes up, party people. I agree. Bring the likes up, folks. Nina says, can you talk a bit about the European Doberman and your thoughts, particularly what Victor was like, and if you've observed Zuko or have any opinion? I think their Serbian lines are actually crossover. I know nothing about Doberman pedigrees, so I cannot speak to lines and one line versus the other line and so on and so forth. The only thing I've observed with the European lines is of course, you're talking about like American bred Dobermans. They tend not to have the drive and the size that you might see in the working line bred Dobermans in Europe. And I'm speaking to the working lines, not the show lines. In general, I mean, unfortunately, the reality is all Dobermans tend to have tons of health issues. Hopefully, Zuko remains healthy and grows to the ripe old age of you know 10, 12 years old. But this is a common problem, and from my understanding, it goes across all lines. Everybody accuses all the Doberman fanciers accuse one another, like, oh, those European lines all have DCM, and then, oh, those American lines are weak, and they're all unhealthy. Everybody accuses everybody of everything. At the end of the day, I think it's a breed that's just unfortunately just generally riddled with a lot of health issues, and then unfortunately a lot of nerve issues, um, a lot of what is it draw yeah, nerve issues, I would just say. Like some of them actually do have really good drive. um Zuko and Victor, they're quite similar. I think Victor probably had a little size on Zuko. They had similar type personalities. I think Victor, to be honest, had quite a bit more drive than Zuko has. But other than that, I would say they're pretty similar. I know that there's a lady, I've mentioned her before. She's in the U.S. and I know that she's like kind of trying to reclaim the Doberman, and it looks like she's actually produced some nice dogs for PSA, so on and so forth. So I know there's some people that are really making some reclamation efforts with the breed, but to be honest, I don't think the breed has any kind of long-term survival for two reasons. So reason number one, um, the the issue is that cropping and docking is being banned more and more, and as cropping and docking becomes progressively more banned, that breed is going to shrink and shrink, because the reality is the vast majority of people do not want a Doberman that isn't cropped and docked, and I don't blame them. So as that continuously gets banned, and I don't even think you can enter a cropped and docked Doberman in a working or show class in Europe anymore, right? So all the Dobermans there are fully eared and fully tailed, and I hate to say it, looks terrible. And then the other thing is, because of all the health issues and let's say workability issues that they have, the gene pool is super super narrow, right? Super super narrow. And what they really need to do, if they were serious about kind of saving the breed, what they would do is they would do what the horse breeders do. They would allow a few, they would license some outside studs, right? And what I mean by that is they would allow other breeds to be bred into the Doberman, and those puppies would be registered as Dobermans. And it would be, of course, select, studs that they feel would complement the Doberman and improve upon it, right? So, like, you'll see this in horse breeds where it's like, whatever horse breed you want to think about. Let's just say Dutch, a Dutch warm blood of some sort, right? They would Olden. What is it? I'm not a huge aficionado on horse breeds, but like think about like Oldenburger. I think that's how you say it, right? So an Oldenburger, they will license like a stud, like a Andalusian, even though it's not an Oldenburger, they'll still license it as an official, like I guess Oldenburger stud, and then you can breed that into the lines, and like it's still those foals are still considered Oldenburger, even though they're really 50% Andalusian. That's what the Doberman really needs to do if they're serious about rehabilitating the breed, but they're not, and I don't think they ever will, and I just don't see the breed going anywhere, unfortunately. But Zuko's a cool dog. Let's see. Justin Erickson says, I have two males and a female, all intact. One male bully, the other male guards females from the other male. Should I go with a biblical correction or another route? Wait. The other male guards. Oh, your one male's possessing the female. You just manage your home a lot better. You know what I mean? And if that entails a correction, I can't tell you these things because I don't know what's going on in your house and I don't see it. And there's a lot of nuances to it. So, you know, yeah, you just got to manage the situation better. Or maybe they've come to a healthy understanding where it's kind of like these two are, good buddies, and the other one's kind of the odd one out, and he just kind of hangs out on his own, and everybody gets along as long as it goes like that. Or maybe it's something where there's a lot of friction, and you have to take some very significant steps to kind of straighten the situation out at home. I can't speak to it, right? Better built dog says leash law in Tennessee is just a fine. It's just a fine everywhere. It means it's legal for a price. I've had to pay one, and my dog stayed off leash through the whole interaction. And after I got the ticket, Soulstar says I love training dogs, but I wouldn't be able to stand answering the same questions and dealing with people who won't follow instructions. Cheers to you for having the patience. I've learned a lot from you. Awesome. I'm happy to hear that. What will you search in your new puppy? I don't know. I haven't really decided yet. Someone asked if I can feed virgin coconut oil to my German Shepherd. I actually don't know. I don't really feed that, so I can't speak to it. What age do you start drive building, or just let the pup grow for a while before doing anything? I don't really drive build. I teach the dog to have the right relationship with toys. Drive is something that's inherent in the dog. It's either there or it's not, right? Um, Resource guarding. Do you use pressure or pressure conflict free training? I use a combination of both, right? So there's time to reduce conflict, and there's a time to utilize pressure to reinforce behaviors that are productive to the dog, and steer the dog away from behaviors that are non-productive. But resource guarding is one of those behavioral issues that if you just apply positive punishment to it, you're probably the dog's probably going to come to the wrong conclusion. Let's put it that way. So you might think you're punishing the resource guarding, but the dog's actually going to associate that event maybe with the wrong thing, and it's only going to increase the dog's belief that you are a threat to their resource. So I do things that um, challenge that belief in the dog that I'm threatening his resource. I completely change the dog's mind. I say, not only am I not a threat to your resource, I'm going to give you more resources. And the only thing that you have to do when it comes to this resource and me is follow my instructions surrounding the resource. I'm not taking it from you. I might manage how you access it, and I might tell you when to stop accessing it and when to start accessing it. And I'm going to create a ladder of compliance around that resource, but I'm not going to directly just punish the dog for resource guarding 9 out of 10 because it's generally a very unproductive thing. Onyx says 145 people, 43 likes. Come on, people. He's not getting paid to give you all this free material. I am not getting paid. You're very correct. All right, let's see. The three rats. I have a high drive male Australian Shepherd, but he bites my body and tries to bite my face. I don't know how to stop this. Any advice? Yeah, correct him when he does it, right? At the end of the day, it's like people are always looking for that. Oh, do this, and all your problems are going to go away. No, you have a holistic problem. You have a dog, and it sounds like he's having a good time, and you really just have no idea how to control the dog, teach him impulse control, teach him what's okay and what's not okay, and set up a productive program with him that he and you can both follow in order to accomplish success, mutual understanding, living a mutually enjoyable experience, so on and so forth. So I suggest you use our online courses. Elite Off-Leash Obedience course is great. Check out my book if you don't want to spring for a course. But you need a program. You're not following a program, which is why you have these problems. Coralizer says, how many levels of drive in general are there? I don't know what you mean by that. Nobody's, you couldn't really categorize it like there are 10 levels of prey drive, if that's what you're speaking about. You can't really, there's medium drive, high drive, low drive. I think that's probably the best way to think about it. Josh Gilbert says, back to hand face analogy. What if you overpower the resistance or crank up the pressure to achieve the desired behavior? So he's speaking about this. If you're pushing on on my head and I was resisting, and if you just over pressured me and forced me there, right? Um, Again, that is actually a possibility, right? It depends on my response to that. And that's where you as a trainer has to be, smart. If you did it maybe a couple of times and I was fighting and then I ended up down here, right? And you stopped, right? And I was like, oh, you know what? This is actually not so bad. I think I'm going to stay like this. That would be fine. But if I was popping up and, getting even worse and worse and becoming overstimulated and losing my ability to, cognitively process what was going on, then you might have to think of another solution to that problem, right? So again, the training with pressure is an art. It is a true art. Positive reinforcement training it's fine. It's I don't classify it as actually being particularly difficult, right? Like I can get my young daughters in here and give them a clicker and some food and tell them, hey, do this, and progressively reward behavioral approximation until we achieve this behavior. And if the dog's sufficiently motivated to work for the food, they're going to accomplish that. Like, it's funny, once I actually were like, hey, teach Gage to play dead, right? And gave them that project, and they did it in like 3 days or something, and they taught Gage to play dead for food, right? They would go bang and he would roll over and play dead for them, right? But like, now when you're using pressure, that's not something that you let children do, for instance, right? It's a much more complicated thing. You have to have a feel for it. You have to really be able to read the dog's responses in front of you. You have to be able to adjust quickly on the fly. You have to know when it's time to apply the pressure, when it's time to release the pressure. You have to be able to determine how the dog is processing that pressure, so on and so forth. So pressure is the realm of true experts. And that's why it's always funny. They're like, oh, you're doing it the easy way. It's like, what are you talking about? You couldn't do it, always the joke, it's like, oh, it's easy with a shock collar. Well, you never trained with one, so how would you know? But if you think it's easy with a shock collar, why don't you do it? Just throw a shock collar on a dog and shock him into listening to you. See how that goes for you, right? So, it's this, you have to really understand pressure in a meaningful way. Onyx says, Gage is fine around your kids. Will he allow strangers to pet him at all? No. Kennel staff, yes. Do you feel Onyx would have been any different at all if you raised Onyx from a puppy? Yeah, probably be a little bit more neutral if I raised him as a puppy. Onyx is definitely more antisocial than Gage is, and he's more confident about it. Gage was a bit more on the nervier end. Onyx is more confident, kind of dominant dog in general. But yeah, like, I know if I'd raised Onyx in the house, he would have been great with the kids, and probably actually, if he just lived here for a while with the kids, it probably would have gone well. I just wasn't going to risk it because, with little kids, with a dog like Onyx, you don't get more than one chance. And I'll never, ever put a small child ever in a position, if I can possibly help it, in which they would be at risk like that. So, yeah, I mean, would he have been social? Probably not. um, Hey has, this is from 007 Fashion. My dog Arnold took your board and train for 5 weeks and purchased your online sport package. I'm looking for a decoy in Ottawa. Why don't you hit up Shield Canine Ottawa? They might be able to help you. But that's awesome. I don't know. I remember the name Arnold. I'm just trying to remember what dog it was. Question with the e-collar. What is the benefit of the stim before the command? In my thought, the dog learns that there's no way to predict and avoid the stim. You stated before it's a nepo-po concept. Yeah, I mean, you have the thing. Most people think of pressure as punitive, and that's the mistake a lot of people make, right? Pressure is punitive. No, pressure is information. Pressure is not punitive unless you want it to be punitive, and that is your goal, and the deliberate strategy behind the application of that pressure in that specific moment in the way that you're doing it. Pressure is simply information, right? Information. Is that punitive? Information. Is that punitive? That might be a little punitive, right? There's a lot of different ways to apply pressure and to interpret pressure. So the e-collar is no different. A lot of people think of the e-collar as this big punitive hammer. He's bad. E-collar, right? That's the mistake a lot of people make. And and it really limits their ability with the tool, and it really limits what they can do with that tool, right? Whereas when you understand that the e-collar can be used to motivate a dog, to guide a dog, to improve position, improve speed, create more activity and arousal in the dog. There's a lot of different things you can do with an e-collar. So, the application of pressure before a command is generally used to create actually more responsiveness to the command, right? So what a lot of people, I'm going to give you guys an example. What a lot of people do with the e-collar, right, is they will blast the dog on the e-collar, usually on a fairly uncomfortable level if the dog does not comply with them. Fido come. Fido doesn't come. Boop. Okay. Now, if you understand how dogs learn, think, and communicate, right? There are a lot of dogs that actually will probably be all right with that. They'll get over it. They'll be like, oh, okay, that was a little unexpected, but I kind of understand what come means, and that was unpleasant, so maybe I'll just come, right? But there's also a lot of dogs that will not process it that way, right? Maybe they're a little more sensitive. Maybe they just really don't have any clue as to what come means. So you go come, boop, right? And holy shit, that was scary. They'll take off, run away, maybe lie down, try to like bite themselves because they got overstimulated. There's a lot of different possible negative responses that would come from somebody smashing their dog on an e-collar for not coming on a recall, and that's really the reality of what a lot of people do with it, right? So people that don't know and then just buy like some cheap e-collar off of Amazon for $50 and think that they're going to train their dog with it, right? So when you make pressure before giving the dog, a verbal signal that will assume the dog knows, what you're doing is you're creating a solution to a problem, right? Versus making something a problem. So if I say, Fido come, bop, right? Fido come, bop, Fido come, bop. Dogs through the process of classical conditioning are going to come up with what? Oh my God, he said come, I'm about to get zapped, right? Is that going to make the dog come? No, that's actually probably going to make the dog shut down, flee, and it's going to create a lot of negative associations with the word come, right? We call that a suspicious association, right? Which is something that, a lot of dogs can develop, especially if you're very, let's say, ham-handed with your application of pressure with your use of certain tools, right? Now, what if you put the dog, let's just say hypothetically, okay, you put the e-collar on the dog and the dog was running around in the field, and maybe you had a long line on the dog. In fact, you probably would if you were smart. And the e-collar was set to a level in which the dog would perceive it but not be afraid, not be overstimulated, not be in pain. Just what is that? That's an interesting feeling. So let's say you started doing that, right? And the dog feels it. It's like, what is this? Right? What's going on? And then after that went on for a second, you went, Fido, come, and you gave the dog a little tug on the line. And the second he turned towards you, oh, that annoying problem went away. And he started coming to you, and he got to you, and you gave him maybe a cookie, or you pet him on the head and told him he was a good boy and sent him off. And you repeated that a few times. I guarantee after you do that a few times, he's going to feel, what's he going to do? He's going to turn around, look at you, and come right at you, right? Because that is the classically conditioned association you've created with that stimulation, right? That is an example of how you might use that pressure to create a productive response in the dog, right? So there's a lot of different things that you can do, but the best way to think about it is, are your commands a problem or are your commands a solution? If your command leads to pressure, your command is a problem. If your command is a solution to pressure, right, your command is a solution. Think of it that way. All right. MDC says, we can clearly see all that boxing you've been doing is paying off. What are you trying to say? What else do we see? What are your thoughts on water spray bottle to interrupt punish behavior? Basically an aqua bunker, I suppose. If the dog finds it significantly aversive, it can work. You want to carry a spray bottle around. I mean, you could definitely do it. Brenda says, are you coming to the CWDF IGP trial June 27-29 in Edmonton? Yes, I am. Big John says, "How do you feel about raw diet?" Well, we sell raw food, and I feel like it's good. Man, I'm getting behind here. Let me just go ahead quickly. All right, let's see here. Michael Menezes says, "How is Mace? I don't know about. I don't know what's going on with Mace. I haven't heard back. I've already said it 1,000 times, guys. I'm not going to talk about Mace anymore, just because I don't know what's going on with him. He was sold over a year ago, and I have not had contact. I've reached out a couple times, never heard back. It is what it is. Um, Let me see here. Also, why don't you put Bang on Chico or Rocco instead of Yarrow? Well, I'm breeding Bang to Yarrow because that is an inbreeding on a very well known dog and a very well known line that's been proven through multiple generations to carry certain qualities and have certain, and to bring very specific traits to the breeding equation. So those puppies are going to be worth their weight in gold as long as they X-ray healthy. So that's why Rocco would be a good option for Bang, maybe in the future. Bang is a DM carrier, and I am still waiting on Chico's DM test. So I will not breed him until I have confirmation that he's either clear or a carrier. And if he's a carrier, then I could not breed him to Bang. All right, let's see what else we got here. TT says, Has, congratulations on the Trudeau resignation and becoming the 51st state. Well, he's still the prime minister. And what you have to understand about Trudeau, I know this is a dog training podcast, but, or podcast, I should say, it's a live. Trudeau is, anybody who looks at him and who listens to anything he says or watches his mannerisms understands that he's actually not really running anything. Very similar to your former, well, I guess current, but soon to be former President Joe Biden. He's not really running anything. It's a bunch of people in a back room that are actually running things. He's just the empty-headed puppet that is out in front of the camera, with the family name and the dramatic mannerisms that some brainless individuals subscribe to. That is Justin Trudeau. He's not actually making serious policy or he's not really formulating decisions. So them replacing him as a puppet, with another puppet is not actually going to change anything. The only thing that'll change anything around here is actually an election, and when that's going to happen, I don't know. All right, let's see what else we got here. Michael Cleary says, when you're training your puppies to focus heel has, what is the next step after luring the dog's head into the right position? A lot of muscle memory and promoting that the dog stay there and get comfortable moving there, right? Once the dog gets comfortable moving there and develops a rhythm, then we move forward into, the other things that we're going to do. I would strongly suggest anybody who really wants to teach their dog to focus heel, get my focus healing course, and you will learn all of this. I have an online focus healing course where I'll teach you step by step how to train your dog to focus heal. ShieldCanineOnline.com. Check it out. Douglas says, do you let your dogs chase small prey, rabbit, squirrel? Gage will go outside and chase squirrels. So I guess the answer is yes. Velcro says, Oldenburg, not burger. You're right. See, I told you I'm not an expert on that stuff. Nina says, thank you for your in-depth answer. Unfortunately, you're right about the longevity of the breed. Might try to dabble in some protection with Jess. Yeah, that would be awesome. Teaser says, Doberman numbers seriously down in the UK. Same for Rottweilers for the reasons Has mentioned. We got a super chat, $9.99. How do I teach my 14-month-old German Shepherd to bark? He barks when I don't want him to, but won't bark when I want him to, even when I restrain him during feeding time. So barking, right, is not something that you can, let's say, tell the dog to do. It's something you have to stimulate the dog into doing, right? So fun little trick. I think I have a YouTube video on this actually. So by all means, go search my YouTube repertoire and watch it. Uh, I like to tie the dog off, like a 5, 6 foot line. I'll take some food and again, the dog needs to be hungry, and I'll get the dog chasing the food, on the end of the line. So they're pulling on the leash, and I kind of get them following the food around. And of course, I let them win a bunch of times and eat the food, and maybe I'll kind of flick some across the floor and they'll eat it. And they'll get used to kind of fighting against that leash that they're, tied to the wall or tied to the door or whatever. I like to just kind of slip the handle of the leash into a door handle and then close the door, and that's a great way to tie your dog up. And I'll just do that a bunch until the dog's like really like learns to fight on the line that they're tied off to. And then what I'll do is I'll tease the dog and I'll back up a little bit, right? And usually I'll back up and I'll just back up and I'll be like, hey, right? Pah. I'll do something like that. And usually the dog will be like, and maybe I might run a little bit to the other side, go, pah, and I'll do that a few more times, right? And eventually the dog will be like, huh, and make some like little noise. I'll be like, yep, and I'll come in, reinforce the dog, and we'll just rinse and repeat. And usually you can work from huh to huff, right? And then you've got it, right? So you just have to stimulate the dog to the extent that they'll start to vocalize, reward the progressiveness of the vocalization up until you have barking, and you're off to the races. Gregory says, "How do you feel about tracking off leash? Is that something you would try?" I could do it with Gage because he's really he's good on an e-collar on a track. Is it something I would do at a world championship? No. Maybe. Maybe if I'm feeling sufficiently like a gangster. We'll see. If I had two dogs at a well, you can't have two dogs at a world championship. Uh, I don't know. It's not something that I'm a big fan of. You got to really have a lot of faith. Watch me do it though one day. I probably will. Um, let's see. Nin says, about the puppy screaming in the crate. If I correct him, he gets worse, like he wants the attention. I've been ignoring, but it's almost 2 weeks and it's not working. Thanks for the answer. Yeah, you're not correcting, right? Because if you were correcting the dog, like truly for the behavior, you would see the behavior suppress, right? So if it becomes worse, whatever you're doing, you're just actually negatively reinforcing the behavior to become worse, right? You have to punish the behavior. And when you punish the behavior, you're going to see a suppression or reduction in the behavior. So whatever it is you're doing, probably the wrong thing. Maybe the intensity isn't sufficient, but that again, like whatever it is that you're doing is probably not enough. And it's creating more instead of less. International Demodex mites on Mel. Treatment resistant to everything. Really? Demodex is resistant to ivermectin. Demodex is resistant to, what is it? Advantix multi. I don't know about that, my friend. I would look into those. I've never heard of a dog I've heard of people not using enough, right, and not being consistent enough. Sometimes you have to just stay on it for a while. Um, Maybe find another vet. That would be my first suggestion. Will I want a 2.5 or 3 millimeter for my Shepherd? Um, Also flat collar. She's choking too. I have no control. So I'm glad we can start the prong. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you could start the prong and just make sure you use it the right way. Um, I mean, depends on your dog. I don't know how big your dog is, right? Typically for me, like, I'll be in a 3 millimeter. When will I bring another book out? I don't know. We'll see. I don't really have any concrete plans. I got a lot of other things on the go right now. Zach says, my dog gets very aroused prior to a walk with intensive loud barking. I tried a shakedown for the first time today and had some success with it. Any thoughts on shakedowns plus eye contact? I don't even know what a shakedown is. So I couldn't speak to that, and I don't do eye contact for a dog that's so hyper aroused. That's not the solution. Um, Complete Canine Services says, what's up, Has? What's it take to get a stud fee off of Canine Sting? I'm not offering him for breeding. I'm offering him for sale. If somebody wants to buy him, they're welcome to buy him. Um, Chris says, is it expensive to import dogs from overseas? I think German Shepherds go for 2 to 3K in my area. Just wondering, well, if I would be more than that, and if it's worth the hassle of getting through customs, it would certainly be more than that, right? But you're talking about price. If price is your primary consideration, just go on Craigslist and get yourself a cheap dog. But understand very much that with dogs, you very much get what you pay for, and that's not to say that the most expensive dog is not going to necessarily be the best dog. It's to say that a breeder that puts significant time, into what they're doing, and breeding for specific purposes and goals, is not going to undervalue the product of all that work, and that work, even from a breeder, is built on 100 years of previous selection and work, right, from other breeders that have handled the lines previously. So there's a price associated with that. But then the other thing is, it's like, well, why are you getting a dog from overseas, right? Do you know what you're looking for? Do you know the lines? Just because somebody's in the Czech Republic or Germany doesn't really mean anything about the quality of their German Shepherd, right? So do you know exactly what it is that you're after? Are there certain things that you're after that you can only find in Europe that you can't find in America or Canada, right? These are things that you have to ask yourself. And if it's just a question of price, then I would say that you haven't asked yourself enough questions about the kind of puppy that you'd be looking for, and what you might want that puppy for. Somebody said, on New Year's, I walked my female German Shepherd in heat in the most warlike place I could find. I took her off leash, heeled with her 20 minutes, and played ball. Of course, people were complaining. I mean, I've never had, I can't say I've really ever had anyone complain to me, um, in public. I mean, I've been doing it for a long time, so maybe I'm forgetting a time or two, but like, I've never really had anyone complain. I don't think anyone would complain unless your dog's like not with you. So maybe look into that. Um, I've seen people with off-leash trained dogs, and they're like, "Yeah, Has, I do just what you do." And then I'm like, you see them with their dog, and their dog's like fucking 20 feet over there, bothering somebody, or like, pissing on a fire hydrant, and there's people, trying to walk by, and they're like, "There's this freaking loose dog here," like that's not what I ever, suggest doing, and that's definitely not what I do. So, I just want to be clear about that because I've seen people do that. Um, let's see here. James Ellsworth says, thank you for all your great information, videos, much appreciation. I appreciate you. Thank you. Brad Wood says, your little walk with Gage through the city the other day. His ears were back while walking. Is he relaxed or nervous? My sable German Shepherd does the same thing. I explained, Brad, all of this at the beginning. Um, let's see here. Are there any differences in size and character between a DDR and a West German working line? Yeah, those, like, forget this DDR thing. Okay, guys, DDR is a scam. It's not a thing. The Iron Curtain fell many, many, many moons ago. Nobody is preserving those dogs, and it's for a reason, like a lot of things that people didn't really know a lot about. It turns out that the Soviets maybe weren't so good at doing a lot of things. Can you imagine, right? Including breeding dogs, right? So there's a lot of issues with those dogs. They just really generally weren't very good dogs for the most part. I know a lot of people kind of make their, name off of, selling them, because there's a lot of people that have this obsession with DDR. But the reality is that, even when you look at most of the pedigrees, they're not really truly DDR. And even if they are, they're large, nervy dogs. And, there's nothing particularly that makes, and like, there's no professional. I've said this 1,000 times, I'll say it again. There's nobody who is a professional, whether it's in dog sport, police work, or anything, that says, I want a DDR German Shepherd. Nobody. This is only for retail. right? And you guys are retail for the most part. Retail are the people that buy, right? The people that we can sell to. So, a lot of breeders will be like, check lines, DDR, right? Because those are things that retail buys, because retail doesn't know how to assess the quality of something. So they just ascribe quality to certain things that they've maybe heard parroted around the internet, like DDR, check lines, whatever else. Brolio Rodriguez says, what strategies do you use for crate training? Do you recommend a specific schedule for a 14-week-old pet Malinois? Thank you. Guys, I appreciate the super chats, but I don't, you know, need them in the sense of like, if you're asking me complex training questions, there's many steps to crate training, right? So like I'll try to give you something, but like it's not generally something where it's like, get my book, you know what I mean? Like for 19 bucks Brolio, you could have got my book. I go over how to crate train, but like, or get a course, I go over all of that. But look, for crate training, typically with a puppy, my schedule is that overnight the puppy will stay in the crate. Typically for me, I'll put the crate somewhere where I'm not going to hear the puppy, just because I know that they're going to be a little bit shrieky for the first few days. I like to use my basement. I like to use my basement bathroom, things like that, right? So I'll put a radio down there so there's some noise, just so that, the puppy doesn't hear everything that I'm doing and freak out. And then, of course, make sure you properly stimulate the dog, take the dog out frequently, appropriate build appropriate stimulation for the dog, or sorry, create appropriate stimulation for the dog so the dog gets the necessary exercise, so on and so forth. And this is what I would do. If your puppy is tired and you're putting them into the crate, right? The most likely with a short period of time they will sleep. Now some puppies are particularly difficult with the crate training. They'll make like a lot of noise, and even after a few days they'll still be making a lot of noise. In which case then I will start to correct them for the noise, right? Where I'll be like, no, and I'll come down and I'll correct the puppy for the noise and then go away. And the puppy will learn after a few repetitions, like, hey, if you make noise, he's not coming to provide good attention. He's going to provide, attention that they find aversive. And then they quickly learn, oh, okay, we probably shouldn't be making noise. The method that you would go about in terms of correcting the puppy in the crate really depends on the individual puppy. I go over all of this in my puppy course, different things that you can do. Things like wrapping on the crate and stuff like that. But again, the most important thing is exercise and uh, uh, training during the day. And then also, you can give the puppy like a Kong in the crate, different things where they can just kind of learn to calm down. But I don't generally crate train in the areas that I'm in the house, right? I'll put the puppy somewhere where, again, like he's not going to see me, I'm not going to see him. We're not going to hear each other. And then once the puppy's good like that, then I'll bring the crate somewhere where they're in close proximity to me. But yeah. Okay. Leashless Canine says, when you correct a dog for ignoring a command, are you actually applying plus P or is it negative R? It would be negative reinforcement, because next time you give him the command, he will do it. So it seems like you negatively reinforce the command. Yes, I generally will not positively punish a dog for non-compliance. You can do it, but I generally don't. Yeah. All right, guys, I'm going to start wrapping it up here. Aram says, Arams says, yo, how do I get my dog to start barking at the television? You say no and you punish him when he barks until he stops barking, right? I don't know what else to tell you. I don't get into like details for like punishment, because I don't know your dog and I don't know you and I don't know what you know and what you don't know, and that's not something I do on the internet. But yeah, any undesirable behavior you punish, right? Or you think about, what am I doing from a management perspective that is creating the likelihood of this behavior occurring, and then maybe I need to tighten up the way that I manage my dog, aka live with my dog, to such a way that it would limit this from occurring, right? So for me, like for instance, an example of management would be when I have a puppy, I don't leave that puppy loose in my house to pee and destroy things and all the things that people do with puppies commonly, right? And then just punish the puppy when he makes mistakes. I limit his access to my home, and I limit, his ability to just eliminate in the house. I let him out frequently. Gage, get away from there. Put him in, put him downstairs in the crate. Do not let him go in that glass. One of my kids broke her plate or something, and my dog just went over there. Put him downstairs so he doesn't get in that glass. Jesus. That's the last thing we need. Glass in the face. Anyways, yeah. So management is key. Tyler says, do you sell obedience trained dogs only, not just protection and obedience dogs? Yes, I do. See what else we hear. All right, guys, I am going to wrap this one up. I am getting tired, and it's time to prepare for tomorrow. I thank you all for jumping on here. I am going to just read maybe one more comment. Let's see here. Giovanni Michael says, what are your thoughts on having a dog that's able to problem solve versus just do stuff out of reflex conditioned response? Are they equally important to you, or do you favor one over the other? IGP specifically. Well, what do you mean problem solve? Like, at the end of the day, like most people, I find that a lot of people kind of get airy fairy when it comes to dog training, right? And they start getting, oh, like I need my dog to be like thinking and all this type of stuff. And it's like, dogs are very simple, instinctual creatures. Be careful how much you delegate to them in terms of responsibility. But, what I would term to be problem solving would be the dog has been trained how to do something, and there are some obstacle that occurs that prevents the dog, or maybe makes it more complicated for the dog to accomplish the thing he or she knows how to do. And the dog then has to maybe innovate to some degree to overcome that obstacle that maybe they haven't overcome in the past. And that would be maybe an example of problem solving. But I find that if a dog has never really overcome an obstacle, and it's generally a sufficient obstacle, they will fail. But if it's something like, okay, the dog is tracking and the tracking conditions are especially difficult, well, assuming you've trained the dog properly, he understands what tracking is, and he's dealt with difficult conditions in the past and he's worked through them, but there's a balance to be had, right? If you have a dog that feels very comfortable making mistakes, that dog is going to make mistakes. If you have a dog that's terrified of making mistakes, that dog is going to shut down the second he or she thinks he or she made a mistake, because they're worried about the consequence of that mistake too much to be able to innovate and problem solve their way through it. So, there's a balance to be had there. But yeah. All right, guys, you guys all have a great weekend. I'll see you on the next one.